I was connected to Alex Jarbo through our common interest in short-term rentals. As a real estate investor who buys and sells properties, I was conditioned to run away from these type of homes because they're hard to sell. However, my friend Alex here was able to capitalize on them, and these are A-frame homes. And did you know that Airbnb has a category for A-frame homes? Interesting, right? So Alex is here today to share with us how he's been successful in the short-term rental world with his special niche in these A-frame homes. By the way, welcome to the Real Estate Ballers Show. My name is V. Lee. This is the show about sharing real estate, real life lesson, knowledge, and experience. The purpose is to help you to reach your financial freedom through real estate investing faster. Hey Alex, welcome to the Real Estate Ballers Show. How are you today?
Oh, thanks for having me on. I'm doing great.
So, you are a young superstar. Go ahead and give the audience a quick introduction.
Yeah, so if we want to go all the way back, so how I got into short-term rentals, how I got into real estate in general. So I was serving in the Marine Corps. I served 4.5 years in the Marine Corps. Though my last year in the Marine Corps, I decided I didn't want to re-enlist just for personal reasons. And so I started looking at a lot of different real estate classes, or it's not real estate, a lot of different investing classes. And I landed on real estate just because I enjoyed the control that you could have over real estate, like with forced depreciation, and you can control the operations of a specific property. I really like that compared to just investing in stocks or something. So while I was still in the military, I joined a flipping mentorship. And we were on a group coaching call one day, and I realized the gentleman who ran the flipping mentorship, all of their long-term wealth was tied into short-term rentals. This was back in 2015. It was like that. So he was very early to the game. So I actually got him on a one-on-one call, and he was very open with his numbers to show me like what his properties were making. And they were, and you already know, I mean, there were heads and shoulders above the short-term rentals over long-term like rentals. I was sort of convinced at that point. So I asked him to help me decide on how to choose a market, looking at personal reasons and also just like market analysis of just what makes a good short-term rental market. We landed on where I currently live now in Asheville, North Carolina. So I moved here the day I got out of the military. I had some money saved up, but enough probably for like 6-8 months. So I got my broker's license when I moved here, and then I just started looking for a rental for myself. And what I realized very quickly was everything was either way out of my price range, or everything that was in my price range wouldn't have done well as a short-term rental. It probably would have done well if you put like a long-term tenant in there. But for terms of short-term rental, there was nothing unique about the property that would have drawn people to it. So my very first real estate investment that was under my name was a ground up short-term rental. It was an 800 square foot A-frame that we own to this day. And yeah, that's how I got into it. One turned into two turned into four very quickly. And then we brought on some investor capital. And today we're developing over $10 million worth of short-term rentals alone. And we're hoping to triple that next year.
That's very impressive, Alex. Congratulations.
Oh, thank you.
So in today's operations, do you also manage them too, or do you have a company that manages?
Yeah. So we manage in-house, and that's part of the value proposition that's part of the value we bring to our investors.
Okay. So you said you went through a process of determining what market to invest in. If you didn't live in Nashville, would you still, where would you go?
Yeah, and I love this question. So if I lived in DC for 4 years, a little over 4 years, and then I'm originally from Detroit, Michigan. Mm-hmm. So this is what I tell people when they ask me that question. So wherever you live, whatever real estate book you read, they tell you to start in your backyard. And that's sort of true for this as well. You don't have to go into a brand new market. Like if you live on the West Coast, you don't have to invest in Asheville, like across the whole country or wherever market is. You don't have to invest far away when you're first starting. What I like to tell people who ask me that question is, you want to think of where people in your market, in your city that you live in, like to take extended weekend vacations to. Mm-hmm. It might be a market that's anywhere between 1 to 3 hours away. I like to use the two extreme examples. Mm-hmm. In New York City, people will drive to upstate New York all the time to take vacations on the weekends. If you look at California, San Diego, people will drive up north to Big Bear Lake every weekend if they can, like just to do weekend vacation. So there's hundreds of these pockets, of these vacation pockets throughout the whole country that people are traveling to in your area, or those markets exist in your area. When I think if I still lived in the Metro Detroit area, I would be investing up north, like where the lake communities are, where like some of the beach communities are, and then some of like the off-roading communities are as well. It's difficult. It's almost impossible to put all of those communities in to like an Excel document or something. Whoever's starting in whatever market, you're going to know your market better than anyone. You're going to know where those pockets are, especially if you grew up in that market. So if I was starting again and I lived here, I would still be investing here. But if I started again and lived in where I grew up, I'd be investing in those pockets where in Michigan.
I love your response because, I get asked that questions all the time too. Like, so V, how do I pick a good market? And I said, you got to pick a place that you like too, right?
Yeah.
You can,
and you're gonna be more familiar with your backyard than anyone else. You're gonna be like, oh no, that's not a good vacation area, even though I just read that in an article or whatever. At least I don't enjoy it, or whatever the reason is.
Well, I live in Houston, so you don't hear many people say, I'm gonna go take a vacation in Houston.
Right. Where would you say are those pockets that are close to you? Like, where do people like to vacation? Sorry, I'm interviewing you now.
Yeah. No. So this is a very casual conversation that you and I are having, right?
Yeah.
Houston, within driving distance, we have the beach. We have Galveston, Freeport, and then we also have the lake, which is up north. Lake Conroe. Some people may even go to Austin or San Antonio for vacation.
Right. Because they're all close.
Yeah. So
but those first markets, like some of those markets I've never even heard of before, but it's like people are vacationing to those all the time. I bet there are people are vacationing those. So those would be the pocket markets where you currently live.
Yeah, that's a very interesting approach. But so now you took up onto the short-term rental side of things, but not just any short-term rental. You also have a niche in the short-term rental as well. Tell us about that.
Yeah. So I'm in unique short-term rental development. That's what I like to say. I like to say Instagrammable properties. A property that I would be proud to put on my social media, but a property we're building properties that people would be proud to put on their social media. I like to design and build properties and communities, because we're also building out like small micro short-term rental communities where these communities, these properties are an experience in themselves outside of the city that the guest is visiting. So that also plays into a little bit of the seasonality of a market and property. These properties tend to be, if you design them this way, not just design them, if you build unique properties, they tend to be a little bit less seasonal, where again, the property becomes the attraction during the slow season. And then during the high season, the property is still the attraction, but then the market also becomes the attraction as well during the high season.
So what make them Instagrammable? That's the new word, right? The word of the 21st century.
Yeah, so I'm in the mountains and in the woods in my market. So there's certain properties that perform well in specific markets. And I can tell everyone how to decide on what type of properties might do well in your market in a second. But in my market, log cabins, A-frames, cottages, chalets, barn dominiums tend to do really well. We're playing around with tree houses as well. But if you're like, okay, that sounds weird. Like a log cabin's not going to fit in Houston, or a log cabin's not going to fit in the desert of Arizona or whatever.
Yeah.
What you want to do is hop on Airbnb's landing page, on their homepage.
Yeah.
And look at the top markets in your property. The top markets, or sorry, not the top markets, the top properties will pop up on Airbnb's main page. That will tell you what are the top looking properties in your market, and then you can design your properties to look similar to those. You're not stealing anyone's idea by doing that, because it's not like when I first started 6-7 years ago, there was only 2 A-frames on them. Like my very first property was that A-frame. There was only 2 A-frames on the market, and one of them was a long-term rental. So I was the only short-term rental A-frame in my market. And then ever since then, there's been like 10 or 11 that have come up. And my occupancy hasn't been affected in any way because of those extra A-frames in the market. There's a lot to go around. There's a lot of people, if we're talking about these pocket markets, there's a lot of people who are traveling to these markets who are just staying in normal looking houses that if you're modeling your property over someone else's property or market, they're going to do fine. It's fine if there's a flood of, like, when I say flood, like an extra 2 or 3 properties in the market that look similar. That's not going to affect anyone's occupancy. Yeah.
It's interesting. In short-term rental, we look for uniqueness. And then I come from the flipping house business, right?
Yeah.
And when you see an A-frame house, you run away.
Right. To put it into perspective, and I love using the first one as an example. I'm going to preface it by saying that like the first one was built prior to COVID, but the first one was we built it for 250 grand turnkey. And that might sound a little expensive, 250 grand for 800 square foot, but 250 grand with the land, turnkey, with the furnishings, everything set up on the operation side as well. That property, that A-frame brings in last year it grossed 82,000 and it netted 46,000 after debt service, just off of one property. It netted 46 grand. So those are the numbers that you're looking at. And again, everyone's going to be different, but those are the numbers you're looking at when you're playing around with like short-term rentals like this. Now, again, I'm prefacing that because it's like that was done prior to COVID, but you can discount my numbers by 20 or 30%. It's like we only put maybe 35, 40 grand initially into that deal from other people's money and also our money that we borrowed from other people. And I mean, that property throws off practically over 100% ROI every year. If you want to discount those numbers by 20 or 30% because things are more expensive with trades after COVID, and then same thing with materials and supply chain issues, discount them by 30%, it's still a 70% cash on cash every year, which is crazy.
So what type of guests are you getting at these homes?
This episode is brought to you by Buzz Vacation Rentals, a premier property management company in Houston and Galveston. Give Buzz a call today if you need help in managing your short-term and vacation rental properties at 281-549-8432 or visit their website at buzzvacationsrentals.com. Now back to the Real Estate Baller Show.
They tend to, depending on where we're listing them, what I've seen, again, this might be your experience, it might not, but VRBO tends to bring more families, like older families, like as well, like older generation families, and then Airbnb sort of brings sort of more of a newer crowd. With the A-frames and the sort of quirky looking properties, it tends to be a younger crowd. Now, all of our guests are not like that, but that's tend to be where it skews.
Is it because they have to climb stairs to get into your property?
I don't even think it's about stairs because our A-frame has like a bedroom on the first floor.
Okay.
That is a good question, though. I think it's just the like if you look at the demographics and who books it through Airbnb compared to VRBO, people tend to skew a little older on VRBO compared to Airbnb.
Right.
Maybe it's because it's been around longer, but that's what my demographic is. I'm very fortunate when you're playing around with these Instagrammable properties, we do have influencers that come through our properties as well that will repost them on their social media, which is just free publicity at that point.
I didn't realize you're on the mountain. So for us, when I'm thinking of A-frame houses, we have them down here by the beach, but they on stilts. So they sit in 8 feet, 10, 14 feet high.
Those surprisingly do really well on the short-term rental markets. There's even Airbnb has a category for A-frames now. If any property that you're building has its own category, then it does well on the on Airbnb or VRBO, mainly more Airbnb.
Yeah, what do we know, right? What people are looking for could be questioning sometime.
Yeah, absolutely. It's especially sometimes, like I said earlier, like it's difficult to get caught up in I wouldn't stay at that property or I would stay at that property. That might not be what your guest is thinking. It might be the complete opposite.
Yes, that's totally true. So your typical property, are they like 1 bedroom, 2 bedroom? Tell me about
I like to stick to a minimum of 2 bedrooms. I'll do a 1 bedroom if it's an accessory dwelling unit. So like I'll never just build one property on one parcel that's 1 bedroom. I like to stick to 2 bedrooms with a queen pull-out couch and making sure that it's spacious enough to be able to fit 6 people. So 2 bedrooms plus a queen pull-out couch would be 6 people. I like to stick to the 4 to 6 person range if I can. Yeah, so 2 bedroom minimum. I won't build anything more than 1,800 square foot currently. I like to say the affordable housing range of like anywhere between 5 to 600 square foot all the way up to 1,800. That way, that protects us a little bit if our city ever decides to change the short-term rental regulations, that we can sell off the properties. And in that square footage range, there will always be a need for properties in that square footage range.
Between 500 to 1,000?
About 1,800. The maximum is 1,800, yeah.
Okay.
Even those 500 square foot properties, like they can sleep. None of our properties are like 400 or 500 square foot that doesn't have like maybe anywhere between an 800 to 1,200 square foot property around it, like in terms of like primary and accessory dwelling unit. So like the properties could easily, I mean, they're all open floor plan, full kitchens, full bathrooms. So they're houses, they're permanent foundation, stick built houses. Anybody can get a loan on these properties if we sell them. But that's sort of our backup plan if for some reason the market ever turns where short-term rental regulations get crazy strict.
Yeah, that was going to be one of the questions on my list. But since we're talking about it, let's talk about regulations. How are the regulations in your area?
So this Asheville proper, the city of Asheville itself actually does not, they're very strict on short-term rentals. You can't even get a permit for short-term rentals in Asheville. When I first started, out of necessity, I couldn't afford anything in Asheville. So I went 15 to 25 minutes out from the city to purchase my land. In the county, currently, the county allows for short-term rentals as a whole. I don't see that changing anytime soon because short-term rentals have been around like in this market even before Airbnb and VRBO even existed. Just back then you had to pick up a phone to call a real estate agent to book a short-term rental before the platforms existed. Yeah. So I recommend investing in those markets. And then on top of that, if there are short-term rental regulations in your market, don't completely discount that area just because they are. You might just have to get a permit, which is not a big deal. Like some of them, now let me preface that. I've talked to owners that sometimes it's like California has like a lottery system in some cities, which can be incredibly difficult to get. I just recommend moving to a different market at that point. There are markets out there that are short-term rental friendly. It's like the same thing about investing in blue states versus red states. Like you want to be invested, if you're long terms, you want to be invested in more tenant-friendly states. And it's the same thing with short-term rentals. You want to be invested in more short-term rental-friendly cities, counties, anything. So that plays into our strategy as well. The county is more friendly towards short-term rentals because they've been in the county forever. And again, don't be scared of the permit. Like we've gotten short-term rental permits all the time.
I actually, in some way, I feel like requiring a permit is even better. Because it does set the professional apart from the amateurs.
Absolutely.
You know? So I don't mind permits.
If there's already a permit in place, it's protecting you because the city can't just go from permits to just outlawing the properties completely in most scenarios. Sometimes I've heard it happen a couple times. I know it happened in Asheville, but the properties that were currently there and permitted properly when that change happened were grandfathered in. Especially if you're purchasing your own properties. And with me, I'm taking on investor capital. I need to make sure everyone is protected.
That's right. Yes. So walk us through your typical deal from ground to guest ready.
Yeah, so I'm a licensed real estate agent here in North Carolina, but I still rely on a real estate agent to help me find my deals because she is way better than me that I am. So she knows exactly what I'm looking for. We also purchase properties. So we'll purchase properties that have some sort of acreage attached to them if they're unique enough. So if it has a beautiful view, the property's a cabin or some sort of tiny house or like some sort of unique cabin that has anywhere between 2 to 10 acres attached to it, we'll purchase properties with room for future development. But if we're looking at a property just from the ground up, my agent will usually show me properties and then I'll start. She doesn't do the full due diligence on them. I'll do my own due diligence. The number one thing I look at is access to the property. And I say that to people a lot because you have to be thinking about the entire guest experience. And what that means is it's not just the guest experience when they're staying at your property. That also means the drive to and from the property. What I like to say is you don't want your guests to be driving 30 minutes up a gravel road before they even get to your property. A lot of times they're driving in at night. A lot of times they've been traveling a lot and they're new to the area. Sometimes they'll lose cell phone reception before they get to your property. You don't want them to be annoyed or scared by the time they even get to your property. So access is huge. I like to be off of some sort of paved road or state maintained road onto the property. So that's the first thing I'll look at when an agent will send me a property is what's the access look like for the property. Another thing is just verifying utilities. If the access looks good and the property looks good itself on the map, say like Google Maps and like our system, I'll go out and drive to it. So that's step 2 is driving out to the property to look at it. When I was first starting, I would bring my general contractor with me because I didn't know what I was looking for. After doing it for like 6-7 years now, I'm pretty confident in driving out by myself before I bring my GC out. I usually won't bring my GC out until I have it under contract. And then before that, I do things a little backwards. I'll have floor plans already made without the foundation plans. And I'll be like, okay, I have this A-frame, I have this cabin, I have this barn dominium or like a couple, 2-3 floor plans. and then I go look for the land, and then I place the property, so that I have something in mind of what I'm going to be placing on the properties before I even go out there. And then after that, we'll get it under contract and start doing our due diligence with our engineers, with our land planner, and with my general contractor, and obviously my real estate agent as well. Depending on what type of property you're getting, you might need septic permits, you might need digging a well, and then stuff like that. And then that usually takes, during COVID, it was taking about 6 months, but that's probably half that now, about 2 to 3 months to close on the property, on the land. During that time, we're also figuring out our financing. A lot of times we'll purchase the land cash, and then we'll use that land as collateral to qualify for the loan. It's an extra step. It's an extra closing, but it protects you. I've tied in land deals with the purchase of the construction loan, and sometimes our deals have fallen through that way because coordinating the land with the construction loan is a little difficult sometimes. So I like to just purchase the land flat out. That whole process takes about 2 to 3 months. And then the construction can be anywhere between 6 to 10 months, depending on how big the project is. And then we can usually, depending on what time we're starting in the year, we can usually stabilize them in 2 to 3 months. Not stabilize them, but cash flow them in about 2 to 3 months. And then I would say 6 months to stabilize them. So from purchase to stabilize, you're probably looking at 18 months. From purchase to actually renting out the property and probably taking a month or two to cash flow, you're probably looking at probably anywhere between 12 to 14 months. Now if you're purchasing a property that's already built, you're cash flowing from day one, or at least from when you can get the property set up. So probably a month or two to get it set up.
Okay, so when you start looking at property or building one, what kind of return are you looking at? Hey, if you're enjoying this episode so far, do leave us a comment below and also give it a like.
Yeah, if it's for our investors, it's anywhere between 12 plus cash on cash return. I like to do break-even analysis on all my properties. I won't do any property that's over like 40, 42. I've done 42%, but I like to stick to a 40% break-even occupancy, and we'll underwrite them at a conservative 65% occupancy. I used to do 80, but that was way too liberal. All of our properties stabilized are at like 85, 90% occupancy right now.
That's awesome. Would you turn down property if they don't produce a certain return that you're looking for?
Yeah, especially if I'm bringing on investor capital. My agent's the one who's usually bringing me these deals, and then she just passes it on to the next investor. But I mean, it's almost like not an exclusive agreement we have. I'm a closer. Like I've never not closed on a property that we went under contract on. So she understands that.
When you say cash on cash, what's included in that cash? You talking about the upfront cash out of pocket?
Yeah, just like what the investors are putting into the deal.
Do you factor in your furnishing costs as part of that as well?
Yeah, we're tying in. There are some projects that got caught in between COVID and budgets and everything that were done that we're still working on right now. But right now with the current landscape, I'm only working on projects that are anywhere between 6 to 12 cabins at the same time in like a cluster development.
Yeah.
So we're dealing with like bigger commercial loans of anywhere between $2.5 to $5 million. When we're dealing with these commercial hospitality loans, they're very similar to hotel loans where you can tie in the furnishing into the construction loan. The investors are only paying 20 to 30%. So like if it's a 20 to 30% down on the loan, they're not paying for the full furnishing costs because that's tied into it's the FF&E. So it's tied into the furnishing cost. That's tied into the construction loan, which is huge. Because when I first started, everything had to come out of pocket for the furnishings.
So have you stayed at these homes?
Oh, absolutely. I've had my general contractors stay in the houses with their families. I've stayed in the houses because that's the easiest way to figure out what's wrong with the property.
Right.
It's like, oh, this is missing, this is missing, this is missing. And then on top of that, I invite my investors to come stay with their families as well. Because then I ask for like very detailed feedback. I'm like, okay, what's screwed up? Like, what's screwed up? What feels weird? Did this feel weird? Was check-in smooth? All that stuff. I'll put my investors and my builders and myself through our entire check-in process.
So do you classify your home as like affordable, luxury, ultra luxury, mid luxury? I
would say like mini luxury, if that makes any sense. Like, so that A-frame was $250,000. Some months that A-frame, we have an $850,000 cabin we purchased that can sleep 14 people. My A-frame can sleep 6 people. Sometimes that A-frame will make just as much as money as that log cabin does. So I would consider some of these properties that we're building, like the unique properties, to be like on the luxury side of the average daily rates.
And when you say luxury, what type of daily rate are you thinking of?
Yeah, so the average daily rate on that A-frame, if you look at it across the whole year, is about 250 to 300 a night for a very small property.
Yeah.
And if you're looking at leaf season, which is what we are currently, we're filming this in October. Here, leaf season is sort of our busiest season. Summer's still busy, but we can charge anywhere between 400 to 600 a night for that small A-frame.
Sounds like we need to move our operation.
Yeah, or just build an A-frame.
Yeah, we're in Houston and we don't really have too much of seasonality, you know.
Got it. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so the Galveston market, again, it's beach city, so it's more seasonality in the summer. That's where we get most of our bookings. Your seasonality is in the winter, right? Your busy season?
Yeah, so our high season is summer and fall, but I always like to, we also cash flow really well in the winter. It's not as well as the summer or fall, but we don't lose money on our properties in the winter because they're still cabins. People like to stay in cabins in the winter. That's sort of like the picturesque thing, is a log cabin or a cabin in the winter in the mountains. So I like to invest in mountain communities. When I say mountain communities, I'm not saying like ski resort communities, just like mountain communities. They tend to be a little bit less seasonal than like beach towns.
Yeah, and where you are, it seems like it's still affordable. I was in Colorado, Vail, not long ago, and we were walking by a new constructions, and I just was looking at it and took a guess of what it was they were asking for, and it was unbelievable, totally unbelievable.
Was it like 1.5 or something?
Well, no, my first guess was about 4 or 5 mil. And that house
it was a big one. Yeah,
for 26 mil.
Oh yeah, so you were off by like 300,
I'm not sure
400%.
cash flow at that number. Just so crazy. So do you have plans to expand into other markets?
Yeah, so right now we're just in Buncombe County, like just in the Asheville area, in that market. Probably when I get to 50 or 60 units in this market, which will probably be sometime next year, I'll start to look at other markets. I've already started looking into other markets, but the hard thing is like teaching people how to just operate and build the properties the way I do. I'd be partnering with people in different markets. So I would be the investor in those projects essentially. That's one of the reasons why I teach and I coach. I coach people that I eventually will partner with, because it's difficult to find people that do what I do in terms of short-term rental development. So yeah, I mean, whenever that time comes, sometime next year, I'm going to be getting into different markets. I'd also like to get into boutique hotels, like new development of boutique hotels. But that's a completely different strategy.
Yeah. I'm not sure how the A-frame will work out here in Houston. I'll be very curious to know.
Yeah, just go on to Airbnb and see what's popular in Houston. Like, what are the structures? If I had to guess, it's going to be that modern contemporary. If I had to guess, it's going to be that modern contemporary look with some like brown finishes, is what I'm guessing. I haven't been to Houston, but I've been to Austin, and I saw a lot of that.
We're totally different, though.
Oh, different.
Yeah,
okay.
Very different. In the architectural, the design. Yeah, very different.
You're looking at more like ranch style houses then?
Yes. Okay. So looking ahead, because this is where you're going all in with your investment strategy, right? What would be some of your major concern as you expand this model?
So the biggest thing is, and I don't know if you guys have already done this, when you say model, what I hear, like, I'm in the hospitality industry. I am not in the Airbnb. Mm-hmm. I am not in VRBO. I am in the hospitality. I'm not in short-term rentals either.
Thank you for saying that. Yeah. And I thank you for not saying like I'm in the Airbnb business, because that makes you professional.
You're in hospitality. I read hospitality books. I just read a Disney book on hospitality.
Yeah.
So it's like you're in the hospitality market. And then, so when you look at other hospitality companies, how do they run their companies? They have a direct booking site. They have a site where they can push people towards. Mm-hmm. So that is the next 5 to 10 years. It's almost going full circle now.
Yeah.
Whereas, I mean, we still rely really heavily on Airbnb and VRBO. That's completely fine. And there's nothing wrong with those companies. But those Airbnb and VRBO and any online travel agency, OTA, should be looked at as a marketing arm to your business. Mm-hmm. It's not where your property or your business should live. Because if something's going to happen in one of those companies one day, if something happens, then you're completely left out to dry. So building out a direct booking site is the future. Like as we expand, that is our goal. That's what we're doing. That's what we're working on right now. And honestly, the easiest way to start collecting contact information of people and remarketing to them is we use a service called StayFi. And StayFi is a little disc, and I don't know, you're smiling, I don't know if you use it, but it's a little disc that plugs in the back.
Yes.
Yeah, phenomenal. So for people who don't know, it's a little disc that plugs in the back of your router. It creates a landing page for your internet for your guests, and people have to put their email address in to get access to the internet. You collect their email, and then you can remarket to them. I've looked at Airbnb. Some people have argued with me on this, saying that it's against Airbnb's and VRBO's like guidelines. I've read the same things they've read and they've showed me. It doesn't look like there's anything. There'd be something wrong with it if you were trying to get the guest off of the platform, if they're at point of sale, if they're trying to book with you. But if you're trying to get them to book with you after they've stayed with you, there's nothing wrong with that.
Totally agree. Stay5 is actually a genius way to collect your guests.
Yeah, Arthur's phenomenal, the owner of the company.
Yes.
Smart.
Yeah. When you look at it as a hospitality business, that does change your perspective of how you run your business, doesn't it?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Yeah. You are in the hospitality industry. And as these unique properties progress, and as these unique stays and these unique experiences progress, and it's not just through Airbnb and VRBO, like the big companies are doing it as well. Like Marriott and the JW Marriotts and all these bigger hotel brands are pushing out these like unique hotels and boutique hotels as well. Like the guest experience is changing. People are expecting more from their stays. So it's like, yeah, you have to think of yourself in the hospitality industry 100%. And then you have to see how the hospitality industry as a whole is evolving. And it's evolving every single year.
How concerned are you with the abundance of supply that's coming into the market?
Yeah, I mean the unique properties is a hedge against that, because it's like if you have a unique property that's priced that people would be very like they're putting it on their Instagram, they're putting it on their social media, they're excited to stay at your property outside of the city they're visiting. If you have a unique property versus just a normal single family house that was a conversion from a long-term rental to a short-term rental, and they're priced relatively similar, someone's gonna choose that unique property all day. And then if for some reason you get into a point where with oversaturation, I would say 95% of the people aren't thinking of themselves as a hospitality company. They're just, I have an Airbnb company. My property just lives on Airbnb. Thinking about the stuff that we are talking about on this podcast, that we've talked about on this podcast, that's what's going to set yourself apart. Short-term rentals have been around forever. And like I said, you just had to pick up a phone. And my current one-on-one mentor I have, he started building short-term rentals in the 80s.
Yeah.
So it's like short-term rentals have been around forever. It's just the way we book them has changed.
Yeah.
So the industry is going to be around forever.
Yeah. And I think COVID is a blessing in disguise. I mean,
it put short-term rentals in the spotlight.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So with these homes that you're building for short-term rentals, if you think of it in terms of boutique, hotel, or hospitality, what's your lifespan of because every hotel, they go in after so many years to give it a facelift. Do you plan to exit, or do you think you're going to, revamp?
Yeah. So it depends on what property we're talking about. If we're thinking about log cabins, there's a timeless feeling about log cabins that will probably never change. When it comes to the properties I have with my investors, they're 10-year holds.
Okay.
And that's a moving number. It could be 8 years, it could be 12 years, depending on what the market looks like in 10 years, because we never know.
Yeah.
So those are long-term holds at 10 years. I don't see us doing a facelift from a new construction property to 10 years from now. We would just be selling the property at the 10-year mark or whatever that year is. When it comes to log cabins, I don't think they would ever need a facelift. It would just be a couple like not structural changes. Like if things need to be changed in terms of like CapEx stuff, like if toilets need to be changed, if flooring needs to be changed, but I wouldn't really revamp the property for a log cabin. Same thing with we're in the process of purchasing a historic house. The historic house feeling on the inside is what gives it its features. So I would never change anything about that either, outside of like exterior paint and stuff like that. So yeah, our strategy is 10-year holds with our investors. It's probably a little longer with the properties my wife and I own without investors, just because we're so used to the cash flow at this point.
So how many more would you like to have in your portfolio?
I don't really like to set a number, because it could be random that my one real estate agent brings me 20 properties or whatever. Like it's happened before with 6, 7 properties at the same time.
Yeah.
Currently where I'm at now, I'm very happy actually with like, we're developing 24 cabins right now. That's a good enough workload right now.
Mm-hmm.
Once those 24 are done, where I'm looking to triple it, that's where I can hire project managers and other people to help me with the management. The management side of the business is already taken care of on the short-term rental side, but the management of construction, that's where I'd like to bring someone on. So to free me up to just work on getting into different markets and stuff. So I'm really happy where I'm at right now, or where my business is at right now with the $10 million worth that we're developing right now. But I don't like to cap it, because if I cap it and there's a really good deal that comes across my table that I feel like we could manage effectively, I don't like to be like, okay, I don't want to do that. But like I said, 50 to 60 is the goal in this market. We'll probably reach that next year, and then I'll be hiring a project manager just to oversee the development of those projects while I look for different markets and just put out more content. Like I love putting together content. I love taking people on site on my projects and showing them like, this is what got screwed up. This is what I learned. This is how we're fixing it. This is what we're doing. I love doing stuff like that. So that's where I'm going to be in the next couple of years.
That's amazing. Sharing your experience through the lens.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it.
Okay, so what is one thing that the audience might be surprised to learn about you?
I was a magician for 15 years before I got into this. I was a magician prior to the military, and it stuck. I did street magic. I did like street magic. I live in DC, so we'd like go to bars and stuff and do magic for people. Not like with like rabbits or anything, just like cards and coins and stuff. And that stuck with me. It's like almost like a networking thing at this point. I was just at the ClickFunnels event, a marketing event for people who don't know what ClickFunnels is, 3 weeks ago, and I was just doing magic tricks to people, just like as a networking thing. So yeah, I do magic tricks, and I'm a. You can't really see it here, but I'm a Guinness World Record holder as well.
That's very impressive. Now I got one more thing on my list of guests.
Yeah, that's funny.
So you are a magician, and now you're taking your magic tricks and applying it over to
applying
right?
it to short-term rentals.
Short-term rental. That's so cool. Okay, so last questions. How does the audience get in touch with you?
If you guys want to reach out to me, I'm pretty active on LinkedIn. You guys can just look me up. You guys can check out my free YouTube channel. That's Alex Builds. It's a logo of a blue treehouse. And then I'm also a writer for Bigger Pockets. So I write for the Bigger Pockets blog. So you guys can check me out there. I also have a course that I put together 3-4 months ago that we've been selling. That when I say like I've been coaching people and I've been helping people, most of these questions that we talked about today come up. If you guys are interested in that coaching or in that program, that's at my personal website, which is alexjarbo.com. That's where my previous interviews live. That's where my YouTube channel link is. Everything that I work on is on my personal site. And if you guys are interested in that coaching, you guys can check that out. Just a masterclass button that you guys click on. You guys can sign up through that.
Thank you for watching the Real Estate Ballers show. Isn't what Alex doing cool? Absolutely. If you found value in this show, don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button so you won't miss another one. Okay, we'll see you in the next video.